The New York Rangers did not make any big moves in this year's NHL free agency. They signed one guy for the actual NHL team so far in Sam Carrick, a fourth-line center who can play a solid two-way game there, physical guy, but definitely not a star-level player, and definitely not even a big signing. He's a fourth-line center, and that's what he's going to be at best. Then you have a guy like Riley Smith, who the Rangers traded for, who is a middle six kind of winger there, can play in the top six, but is more of a kind of second line or third line kind of right winger, can provide some great depth scoring on the third line there, being a solid kind of two-way winger there, helping the PK, plays fairly physical, but also can be a 50-60 point kind of guy possibly, while playing alongside guys like Ryder and Zibanejad on that second line. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens here for the rest of this offseason. Do the Rangers decide to go out there and make a big trade happen, or maybe make a signing here or there? There's not too many, big name free agents left, but there's a couple decent free agents left that could be nice targets for this Rangers team. But the question is, has Chris Drury and the New York Rangers front office already done their heavy lifting by acquiring a guy like Riley Smith? Myself, and I'm sure most of you Rangers fans would agree with me when I say this, let's hope not. Let's hope there is another big deal out there, whether it is, more than likely going to be via a trade. Ideally, it's not a rental guy, because when you're constantly giving up first-round picks and high-tier assets like we have done over the last while, the trade deadlines, you look at a guy like Andrew Kopp, Tarasenko, Patrick Kane, there's some others as well. It's not ideal to constantly be giving up a lot of draft capital and prospects for these rentals. So hopefully, if we're going to make a big trade happen where it is a first-round pick, plus, whatever it is, hopefully it is for a guy who has more term than just 1 year, or at least a guy who could look to extend at some point. But my point here is, are the Rangers actually done with making their big moves until this year's upcoming NHL trade deadline? Like I said, they made that little move there for a guy like Riley Smith. They're a second and a fifth round pick. Obviously not a crazy trade. I'm fine with giving up a second and a fifth for a rental of a guy like Riley Smith, who is a second line caliber guy, plays a solid two-way game, help on the PK, plays very physical, a veteran guy, has been a true playoff performer as well. And that's one big thing with him, is he is a true playoff performer. That is very important. This guy shows up in the playoffs and accelerates and kind of exceeds his actual regular season numbers there. He takes a big step forward in the playoffs, which is important. But are the Rangers actually done with their big moves this offseason? I think it is a possibility. I'm not saying I'm hoping for that. I definitely want to see more moves happen with this Rangers team this offseason. This team is not good enough to win a cup. I think as they're kind of built right now, unless Igor is going to save every single shot he faces, this team's not really good enough right now to win a true cup. So are we done? I think it's possible, unfortunately. I think we might be looking at some other kind of smaller tier moves. There's a guy, Daniel Sprong, up there in free agency. As I was recording this video, he is not signed yet. I think he'd be a nice addition. But again, he's a second line guy at best, more of kind of a lower tier, maybe kind of second liner, decent second liner, but more of a kind of middle six guy there. So that's not a crazy kind of top six, top line caliber guy, a decent kind of middle six winger there in Daniel Sprong. I think overall, though, are there some moves out there for this team to make? Hopefully. But maybe a guy like Nikolai Ehlers is a possibility. There are some decent players still out there via trade that could happen, but honestly, I think there's a chance that we might be done with the actual big moves this offseason, which would be very disappointing. This team, like I said, is not good enough right now. We got to make some more moves here. We got to add, ideally, a true kind of top line or top six caliber right winger, and then you could have a guy like Riley Smith there on that third line, which would provide some great scoring depth. Maybe a Kakko trade happens there. I think that's a possibility, but right now, as things stand, this team is not good enough, and they could possibly be done with the big moves this offseason, but it doesn't mean they're not going to make a big move happen at the deadline there. At the deadline, though, I just hope that we're not going to make, a couple, once again, like Tarasenko and a Patrick Kane, where it is, two rental kind of guys where we're giving up, multiple big tier assets and, first round pick or possible 2 first round picks, which ended up being a second for Kane there because we didn't go that far in the playoffs. But still, my point stands, I don't love giving up high tier assets for rentals. And that's what kind of happens for the most part of the deadline there. It's mostly for rentals. So that's kind of where I don't love that idea of just waiting for the deadline there, because we're probably giving up, a first round pick plus for a rental, which is not ideal. You can't constantly keep doing that, because obviously this team right now does not have a ton of draft picks. Right now we have no second rounders for the next 3 years. We're missing a third rounder as well. We have no fourths. This team is missing a lot of their assets. We do have all our first round picks. That is a lot of draft capital, not with this team right now that we've traded away over the last, deadlines or off seasons. So hopefully, this team can be smart here, make a good move happen this offseason to acquire a very talented, forward defenseman, whatever it is, because we still need to add another defenseman here to kind of take the spot of Erik Gustafsson, unless this team believes in a guy like Matthew Robertson or Zach Jones to go out there and really kind of take that spot of Erik Gustafsson, which I think Zach could do a fine job filling that. But come playoff time, I'm not really sure I want to see Zach Jones on this team as a true kind of, top 6 caliber defenseman. He's the number 7 or 8 guy. I'm fine with that, but come playoff time, I'd rather a bigger, tougher, more experienced NHL vet who's been in the playoffs. He's done that. Maybe won a cup or two possibly as well would be ideal, but that's not necessarily there. Just a physical guy who can move the puck, play solid defensively, and ideal could probably kill penalties as well. But in general, there are a lot of question marks with this Rangers team going forward, and hopefully they answer them at some point this offseason. Do not wait until the deadline, which would be a little unfortunate. Next up here, let's take a look at some of the big major signings that have happened throughout this NHL free agency. I'll kind of talk about whether I think they were good contracts and whether or not I would like to see the Rangers kind of match those deals or possibly give a little more. As well as after that, we'll take a look at some of the prospects in this Rangers system currently that I think could make a decent impact on the NHL team this upcoming season to kind of fix some of these holes that we definitely still have a need to fill at some point, whether it's this offseason or throughout this next season. Starting off with the free agents, though, first kind of major deal here, a guy like Brett Pesce signed a 6-year deal with a $5.5 million cap hit with the New Jersey Devils. Defenseman there, solid defensive guy, 29 years old. I think that actually is a pretty fair contract. I don't love saying that about the Devils there, as they are rivals of our team, but honestly, I think that is a fine contract. And if he were to give that out to a guy like Brett Pesce there, I would not have been too upset about that at all. I think Chandler Stevenson, though, he got a bit overpaid for my liking as well. I was a big fan of him, but got a little more than I would like to see there. He has a 7-year deal with a $6.25 million cap, but he's already 30. That's not in a great contract there. Jake DeBrusk got a 7-year, $5.5 million cap hit. I honestly think that's actually a decent contract. I don't think it's a great one, not a super team-friendly one, but definitely not too bad for a free agent signing. 7 years, 5.5 for a solid kind of second-line caliber kind of guy, plays physical game, could be a 50, 60-point kind of player, something around there is kind of what about he could bring. If Rangers offer that, I would not be against that, but I think Chris Drury didn't really want to hand out these super long-term deals, which most of these free agents got, with the cap kind of expecting to kind of skyrocket up in the next couple of years. It seems like a lot of these teams out here kind of offered quite a bit, quite fairly high cap hits, but also fairly long-term contracts. A lot of kind of 5, 6, 7-year deals were handed out. I think the Rangers and Chris Drury, the front office there, kind of wanted to stay away from some of those big deals, which I'm not against, but obviously that means you're not signing any big free agent names, and that's kind of why we had to go after a guy like Riley Smith, who is a rental with this team more than likely. Maybe he gets signed back next offseason as kind of a possible cheaper deal because he is, getting into his kind of mid-30s there, but still, my point stands. I don't think Chris Drury wanted to go out there and pay this kind of high cap, which a lot of these guys got, but also for a very long-term deal. Because it's one thing whether you're giving out a long-term deal or a high cap. When you're giving out both in free agency, sometimes, these deals don't look too great. A while ago, whatever it was, like 8 or so years ago, we had that really kind of awful free agency where guys like David Clarkson were getting massive contracts. A lot of those deals look pretty terrible. So is this going to be another one of those? Possibly, but with the cap going up, some of these deals are going to look fine, but some of them are not going to look too good at all. And a couple more here before we carry on to the prospects that I think could make an impact. A guy like Sean Monahan, 5 years at 5.5. He's already 29. I actually don't mind this deal at all. For the Columbus Blue Jackets, I think that is a phenomenal signing. Normally, they kind of have to overpay a bit for some players just because they're not obviously a great team and not the biggest market in the world. I think that is a perfect signing for the Columbus. Again, a division team. I don't love talking great about them, but I'm going to be honest here. I think that is a good contract, especially for them. And if the Rangers were offering him about 5 years at $5 million, I would not have been against that at all. I think that's about kind of what he's worth and deserves. So overall, I think that's a pretty solid contract there. If the Rangers offer something around there, I would not have been against that. But again, I don't think Chris Drury wanted to go super long term. A guy like Matt Roy, he got 6 years at 5.75 to the Caps. That's a little too expensive for my liking there. A guy like Brady Shea got a massive overpay, in my opinion. 7 years at $7 million per. He's already 30 years old. I think that is a massive overpay, but obviously, the Preds wanted to make some big moves happen. Stamkos at 4 years, $8 million. That's too much, too long term, and to have a cap, in my opinion, he's worth about $8 million, but for 4 years, that's going to be too much. And Jonathan Marshall, the final guy we're going to talk about here, I liked him a lot, but at 5 years, at 5.5, I think that is too much. He's already 33. He's going to get into his very late 30s by the time this contract is up. I think for the next couple of years, it's going to look great, but after that, it's definitely going to be extremely expensive. Carrying on, though, and taking some of the prospects I think can make a good impact on this team for this upcoming season to fill some of those holes. On the forward side of things are guys like Brennan Othmann, Brett Berard, and Adam Edstrom. I think a guy like Othmann there could be a nice fit possibly on that second line alongside Kreider and Zibanejad on the right wing there. He can play left and right, so might be a decent fit there. A cheap prospect, obviously, very talented guy. Decent two-way games. So kind of worked defensively over the last couple of seasons. Got a lot better on that side of things there. Great offensive player, great shot. Decent playmaking, not bad at all there. Definitely a pretty kind of high-tier prospect and could make an impact at the NHL level of this upcoming season and do so at a very good level. Or he could possibly fit somewhere on that kind of third line there, maybe in the third line right winger if we trade away a guy like Kakko for draft picks, which I don't think would be the worst idea at all. I'd honestly kind of rather see a guy like Othmann take that spot on the third line over Kakko, especially if we can get some good draft capital back, like a third and fourth round pick or a third and fifth. Maybe conditions on there as well, but I think that wouldn't be a bad idea at all to get some draft capital back for a guy like Kakko and get a guy like Othman on that third line there who can provide at least, I would imagine, what Kakko can bring, but do so on a cheaper contract, save an extra, almost $1.5 million, while also getting some draft capital back, which this team desperately needs to do. A guy like Berard there, nice left winger, smaller guy, but plays a bit of a gritty game, fairly physical for his size. Good offensive threat there. Led the Hartford Wolfpack in scoring last season for goals. Very talented prospect. Again, could be a nice fit there somewhere on that third line possibly. And a guy like Adam Etchem there could be a great bottom six forward. He's very tall, 6'8" guy. Can play left wing, center, and right wing. Very versatile. A big forward. Him and Matt Rempe on that fourth line would be pretty cool to see there. Being, 2 6'7", 2 6'8" guys. They're very tall. Fairly physical, and I think if we could see more of them together, that would be pretty cool to see at the NHL level. And for the defensemen, there's not a whole lot of guys there, but Matthew Robertson and Zach Jones, I think, are both guys who, would be fine on the third D pair for the Rangers. But come playoff time, if it is Zach Jones on that third, left-handed side D pair spot, I don't love that. I want to see a bigger, more physical, tougher guy who can move the puck quite well, more veteran guy who has experience in the playoffs on that third D pair. Throughout the regular season, though, I'm fine with that. So we wait until the deadline to make that kind of move. I'm not against that, but I do think a guy like Robertson could possibly be ready. He's a solid guy, getting more kind of closer to his kind of mid-20s now. He's getting up there in age a bit more, not necessarily a young prospect anymore. Can he make the impact at the NHL level? It's possible, but him or Zach Jones could be decent fits on that third left-handed D pair spot. We'll have to wait and see what happened throughout this preseason training camp and all that good stuff leading up until this 2024-2025 season where the Rangers could possibly be pretty much running it back, which I don't think is the best idea, but come deadline, this team could be looking to make some big moves happen there instead of this offseason. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please smash the like button. Helps with the channel a ton. I would really appreciate it. If you are a Rangers fan, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. Also, comment down below your thoughts on this Rangers offseason. Do you think they're going to run it back with the same team pretty much? Think they're going to make a big move happen at some point throughout this offseason, a big trade, maybe Nikolai Ehlers, who I don't love because he's rental, but still would not be a bad move at all. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and see ya.